newsprint line, so all of our comics are on newsprint. They look, they feel, they smell like comic books used to. And that allows us to keep the price point very low. Most alternate comics are $1.50, some are as low as $1, reprints, and then there are a couple that are like higher page counts that are $2. And here comes our moderator, Pat Jenkins.
Who knew the place was so big? What am I sitting, boys and girls? Welcome to the panel. Am I over here? Or there? Oh, wow, cool. The third world best spot. Okay, cool. Hello, bro. Okay, are we ready to start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Quick show of hands, how many people know about alternate comics?
All right.
Wow, cool. And some newbies in the room as well. Okay, our amazing, distinguished panel here today has done a bunch of them. Want to start with the movie that shows all the clips?
We'll get to that.
Okay. So we're going to begin with David Lucarelli and work our way down the panel. Introduce yourselves, cats.
Hi, I'm David Lucarelli. I write Tinseltown and The Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade.
Come on, give it up for the guys.
My name is Terry Mayo. I'm not as out of breath as Pat, but
Wicked Righteous, man. Very great book.
and I write Wicked Righteous also. I'm Eric Borden, and I write Screwshot for Alternate Comics.
Introduce yourself. Okay. Your turn, Drew.
I'm Steph Cannon, and I have a story in the If anthology with Alterna, and it came out on a Wednesday. And the short story that was in it came out on a Wednesday. It has been picked up for a series that will be coming out next year with Alterna. The name of that comic is Hexed, but it will be under a different title when it comes out next year. And then I also am editor on the Heirs of Isildur comic series.
All right.
And you on the far end, silent majority.
Hello, I'm Ryan Winn, and I'm usually known for inking DC and Valiant comics, but for Alterna, I'm writing a book called Gods and Gears. It will be out in September, and I'm also coloring issues 3 and 4 of the current Scrimshaw series.
Now, what fascinates me about Alterna is it's kind of like the old New World Pictures. If you remember the Roger Corman thing, where Roger Corman was in a position where he was doing stuff that was too different from studio stuff and a little bit more than your usual independent. And with you guys, you're basically facing down the big two. You've got Disney that owns Marvel, Star Wars and everything, and Warner Brothers with DC and everything else. Is it hard creating comics in a niche market where you want to attract readers when you're doing something truly different? You know, let's all talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So the thing is, I think one of the things that Alterna allows us to do is it gives us opportunities to promote our books in unique ways that are both reflections of ourselves and reflections of the books themselves. So I don't know if any of you are creators out there, aspiring indie creators, but I thought we'd kind of go down the line and talk about some of the unique ways that we've done that. For my book, Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, I did my first con here, I think 6 years ago. My first con ever, and we gave out free fangs for your email, right? So for 20 cents, you get somebody on the mailing list, and if anybody's been following Tyler James' Comics Tribe, mailing lists are very important. And this was one of my first setups. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a diorama there on the left. The diorama kind of says, hey, Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade is a fun book, but it's also something that I put a lot of time and effort into. And you get traffic, people come by, they just want to take a picture of the dioramas. People like those things. Celebrity endorsements, you know, this is Los Angeles, that's Kyra from Night of the Living Dead, first zombie.
Oh, Kyra Shawn.
Kyra Shawn.
Wow,
Yeah,
the little girl zombie.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes it's just as easy as giving out a free copy of your book to creators that are higher up on the food chain, and then, you know, hitting them up on Twitter or Facebook and saying, hey, did you read it out? Would you give me a repost? That kind of thing. That works too. Taking pictures of the people that buy your books. I can get to do this, but, you know, anybody that supports you creatively is kind of part of your club, part of your tribe. You want to, you know, show how much you appreciate them and people like to see themselves. So.
That's really charming, by the way. When the first time you did that, like the first, what was the, besides Kyra, what was one of your first celebrity endorsements for the book?
So for Tinseltown, I reached out to Phil Lamar, and he gave me a retweet. I handed him the book. I reached out to Kevin Smith. He said, "Hey, you made a comic inspired by your mom. That's so cool. I'm going to retweet that." Who else? Ron Mars. I just gave him a book at Long Beach. He gave me a retweet. So.
Well, that's kind of cool. So it gives you a taste of their audience, and once again improves that mailing list, right?
Exactly. And then, too, anything you can do to cross-promote your books. So I'm also a musician. And, here's one.
Name your band, by the way.
Dame Fortune. So this cosplay, there's my son, he's 5 years old in the picture, but he played 4-year-old vampire hunter.
He'll want a piece of that when he's of age.
We went to Scotland. This guy here, Colin Mackey, is the guy who's in charge of keeping the cemetery where the real life incident that inspired children's vampire hunting game took place. So they put our comic book up in a little museum in Scotland.
That's great.
They did a thing to state they adopted architecture of the gatehouse, so we had our artists do something with our characters for that, and we got quoted in the Scottish newspaper. And this is brand new. If you want to dim the lights a little bit, this is my rock band doing a song that kind of ties in. I'm a fan of Flash Gordon, the movie soundtrack, that they have the dialogue and the effects for the music. So this is kind of like that. Yeah, and actually, I did one for Tinseltown, which is the book I did for them. It's kind of a period crime drama about one of the first female police officers in Hollywood. I tell people it's like LA Confidential meets Boardwalk Empire. Also, in real life, my mom's a cop, so it's kind of my tribute to her. There's some of the interior art, and that allowed us to promote it in certain ways. The LAPD Hollywood station did an community outreach, so we were able to get some books in the hands of some actual female police officers.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Again, that's thinking outside the box, you guys. That's one of the things that Alterna is interesting about. They actually print on newsprint the way God and Stanley intended.
Yes. For those of you guys that are in the LA area, there's a guy who paid $100. He will take up to 1,000 flyers and distribute them to comic book stores like all around greater Los Angeles. If you want his contact information, just come see us at SP1. I'll be happy to give it to you. And then, speaking of videos, this is the last thing I'll show you real quick. This is the video for Tinseltown.
From creators David Lucarelli and Henry Ponciano, the team behind the Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. Tinseltown.
I was born in 1894. My father was an officer for the LAPD. The last time I saw him, I was 15 years old. He and his partner were on patrol. They were shot and killed anywhere in this land. All I ever wanted was to be a cop. But the LAPD wasn't hiring, and Utopia Studios was.
Turn around.
Like this?
How much do you weigh?
120 pounds.
Are you married?
No, ma'am. But why would that
Go through that door introduce yourself to Mr. Coldwell. Next.
It's sort of that.
She's a little confused, but we'll give her a shot.
Confused, huh? That's just how I like 'em.
Hello?
You have your costume?
For my uniform.
Oh, honey, around here it's all the same thing. What do you think?
It's tight, isn't it?
Mr. Coldwell believes in giving the people what they want. Don't forget these.
Do I need some training or?
The club's easy, you hit people with it. The gun's just for show.
Oh, sure.
Welcome to Hollywood, honey.
I don't know if I can do this, Frankie.
Sure you can, Eddie. You're tough, and we're the picture is. Why, a lot of people would kill you where we are.
I had no idea how right he was.
Tinseltown. She was a cop in the early days of Hollywood, the town where nothing was what it seemed. Tinseltown, director's cut, collecting all issues of the ALTERNA miniseries, featuring 5 additional pages of story and 2 new pinups. Live on Kickstarter, March 12th through April 14th.
Now you, sir, tell us a little about your book and yourself.
Alright, well, I have like 7 music videos.
Well, we'll cut them up, but take most of the hour, but I'm sure we're good.
No, we need to start on Dave the last.
Oh.
But I can put on an interpretive dance if I can. Yeah, so my name is Terry Mayo. I do Wicked Righteous, and as far as the topic of the panel and getting people to the book, getting fans to the book, it is pretty much outside the box and almost guerrilla publishing.
It is. To me, that's the exciting part. Even one of you came up with a concept. The Big Two has been publishing the same stuff for 80 years now, you know, and you guys all came up with a concept that the Peter Simeti's company bought. They're out of New England. It's just, everything is really clever. It's like a different movie, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah. And I think that is part of the draw for a lot of people is the diversity and just in what's available. Everything from horror, post-apocalyptic, to Tinseltown, to the hip anthology, and there's something there for everybody. And then we go to the shows and we have all the books. You have the all ages all the way to mature, and it's really impressive the impact that it's had in such about a year and a half. How long have we been doing this right now?
Yeah, amazing. And it lowers the price. And then basically newsprint's the way it was intended. I mean, the whole birth of comics was because newsprint was the cheapest, crappiest thing of pulp they could use to make books. It was never intended to be revered or sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's what's so great about it, you know?
Yeah, and I think most of us on this panel, if not, maybe one or two of us haven't, but utilize everything from the Kickstarter, the Go-Go campaigns, to go to the cons, big and small, to signing the comic shop, and it really is feet on the street for people and actually getting the fans, because you don't have to reach the Marvel and so yeah.
Now, Jared, give us your log line for Wicked Righteous. How would you pitch it to people who haven't read it or?
I'm the worst actually in the world.
You sold it, so there's something there.
I think I've heard it called like Mad Max meets Lord of the Flies. It's
With George Miller winning Golden Fence.
Yeah, it's a love letter to my kids. I have, when I wrote it, I had 4 kids. Now I have 7.
Oh, thank God, I thought you were going dark.
Cue the Bible. No, but it's a love letter to my kids. 4 brothers in San Diego, it's like a dystopian thing. And they're trying to make their way to the state. It's been a fun ride. It's got a lot of support.
Now you write it, and your artist lives in.
The artist for it, Lucas Romero, he's from Argentina. Never been to America.
You've never met him?
Never met him in person, no. But I go back and forth probably daily. I mean, he's one of the closest members of my family now.
That's really exciting. That's charming, actually.
It's really cool. It really is. Family's going. Oh, sorry. And then Disposable Legends also. It's through another publisher called T-Puff. They're out of the UK. Lucas and I do that book as well. 6-issue arc on that one. Yeah, that one's more like a futuristic human cloning is legal. So you get like Muhammad Ali to fight Bruce Lee. Fights with that. But then as clones do, they will. So
Somebody who can pitch, you know, you don't think you can pitch, that's a pretty good pitch.
okay.
Nice.
And
No?
then, sorry,
Okay.
my last one that I have was just picked up and not able to announce with news yet.
Oh, bravo, okay.
But it's called Buddy, and it's kind of like a Milo and Otis meets the Exorcist. It's
Milo and Otis meets the Exorcist. I want to read on that.
Yeah, most of the books I do are mature, but this one is only, I guess, only.
So cute animals and vomiting demons. Thank you for that imagery. How about you, Scrimshaw? Tell us about your wonderful book.
Yeah, Scrimshaw is a post-apocalyptic dystopian adventure. It takes place a couple generations after the melt of the polar ice caps. The dust is settled from the wars of the remaining resources, and kind of takes place in Japan as they've risen as a world power. And corporations step forth to usher in that new era and what could go wrong. So one of those dwarfs thinks it's a good idea to genetically modify whales to be over 200 feet long and dump them in the ocean. So the ocean is one big fish pond. So it takes place around a fishing vessel called the Runaway Horse, and Captain Hans Tanaka runs it. He's gathered his crew from all over the Pacific, countries like Mexico, New Zealand, America, and Samoa. They all come together as a loose-knit family, and when they do, Captain Hans decides to steal an octopus with special powers, and that kind of kicks off the action from there. So,
Wow, interesting. No, this isn't your first book, is it?
that was not my first book. I released, my very first book, which is tragic, but that's part of being an indie creator, is getting out there and getting in the mix. The whole thing is one big chance. That's what you have to realize. Like, you just hang a shit when you put it out there and you start developing from day one. Don't be afraid. It's okay. Just get it out there. Like, I leave the very first book I published out there for people to pick up because, quite frankly, not that good. But the arc which you can develop it in comes very quickly. And you can go from not very good to professional and picked up and not very long at all. But you just have to be fearless about it, is all.
Wow, interesting. And you're up to how many issues have been that?
We're working on issue 9 next month, and then issue 10. So we'll be on the longest running series in Alterna Comics history. So we keep cranking. We've been pretty well received.
And you just went platinum third.
Yeah, we went
Wow, you went
platinum.
Congratulations. Stephanie, you're a wild card. Tell us about since you're a recent addition to this panel, tell us about your book and yourself.
Well, I've got a whole lot of stuff on the plate right now. So, but yeah, I've got short story with the If anthology, which is a Alterna's kind of yearly anthology that they do that has a different theme each year. But my first thing was a 2-page comic that was in, it came out on a Wednesday, which is their bi-monthly anthology that they do. Different than the If anthology. That story got picked up to be a 3-issue series that's going to come out in 2020. It's co-written with my partner Matt Knowles. And what I can say about it is it's an adventure horror. If you've read Hex, then it's going to kind of continue on where that story left off. But if you haven't, then it is a story about a guy who takes a spell book from a kind of like a tourist attraction from a voodoo priestess, and bad stuff happens to him naturally. So that story is going to kind of take off where the 2-pager ended. And but I am also involved in The Heirs of Isildur, which is written by Matt, and we are on issue 10 of 11 right now. But we also have a spin-off series that is going to Kickstarter on Tuesday.
Wow.
Launch on Tuesday, so that is a spin-off from the main storyline that has a medieval setting. And we're really excited about it, working very, very hard. If you guys have ever done a Kickstarter, you know how much work it is. So I'm here, Matt is in Florida, so he's doing the finishing touches on the campaign right now while we get it ready to go. So, and we have a kind of an umbrella company for all of our collective work that we do called In Symmetry Creations. So we've got, we're all over social media if you want to follow along with what we're doing. But yeah, Kickstarter's Tuesday, so we're excited.
So are you going to go down and pick up your own book at New Comic Book Day on Wednesday?
For the one in May? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's
Do
what
you
we all
guys,
want to do, right?
do you all pick up, I mean, how do you get this? Do you wait till it's mailed to the house, or do you actually go out and pick them up at your favorite shop?
If we're lucky enough to have our books in our local comic shops, then yeah, you want to go to that shop and like take a picture and put it on, Facebook and say like, there's my book. And I think that's what we all want, is to be able to go out and see our stories out in the wild.
Yeah, on the wild, as it were. Very nice. How about you on the end, sir? Tell us about your book, tell us about yourself.
Hey, I'm Ryan Winn, and like I said in the intro, I'm usually known as being an inker and sometimes illustrator, but for Alterna Comics, I'm going to be writing a book called Gods and Gears. It's a tale that's inspired by Joseph Campbell and the work of Jack Kirby as well, and it's a tale of two boys and their adventure through the jungle as they discover the truth about magic and technology that was brought by aliens millions of years ago, and along the way they find the importance of friendship and family. So we have it's a big grand backstory with a small story of these two boys.
That's exciting, you know what I mean? I mean, was this your first comic book work?
No, I've been, as an inker, I've been working for almost 20 years. I've been creating independent comics for longer than that, but this is my first just written project that I'm writing for another artist.
Though, right?
Yeah.
You originated this.
Yeah,
That's what I meant. I mean, for all of you, I mean, to bring something about, your own creation about, must be exciting, right?
Oh, yes. So in that sense, it is. It's my first personal creation where I came up with the concept. I'm not, I've worked with other writers and things like that, but this was the first one that I've kind of like let gestate myself, and got to the point where I knew I couldn't draw it myself. I needed to get a real artist like Dean Kotz to come in and draw it.
I hate when an anchor refers to the other guy as a real artist. That's you need higher esteem, my friend.
Thank you, but Dean's the man. Dean's going to really deliver on this project. He already is. We got a few issues in, and it's some of his best work.
And one of the cool things that Ryan does to promote his stuff is if you go to his YouTube channel, he does instructional videos on how he inks his pages and how he inks pinups and stuff. And obviously it helps spread the word about his books, but it's giving back a little bit and teaching the next generation how to do it.
Oh, thanks for mentioning that, David.
I saw Mr. Cimetti ran that on one of your inking pages. It was really exciting to watch you take the page and just do it,
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I didn't realize until maybe like 10 years ago, I started actually inking at a convention with a brush, dipping the pen, not just brush markers or convenient tools, but I brought the actual tools and was bringing it and realized that people didn't even care what I was working on. They just liked watching the brush in action and seeing the process and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun to bring that to YouTube, and then people don't have to come to a convention to see it.
Really interesting. Now to bring it with our panelists again, one of my big questions, Dave and the rest of you, what do you guys do to get new readership? What do you do to increase the readership you have? Because again, you're up against the biggest names in comics. You're up against Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. What do you guys do to hold on to your market share?
Like your first customer, if you're lucky enough to have distribution for Diamond, is the retailer market. So in the case of Tinseltown, it was actually, Peter came to me and he said, listen, the retailers aren't that excited about your book. And so we want to change some things. We want to change the title, we want to change the cover, we want to change the title of the main character. And I said, okay, because he's in constant contact with these retailers and he knows what they're looking for and what they like. And I knew that if we could get it past that gate, that there was a market for it and that people would like it. And when it came out, issue 1 and 2 were the top selling books for Alterna for those months, and we just went into our third printing of issue 1 too. So I was right, but I had to play the game and do what was necessary to get it past the people that were buying it to put it in their stores so that the readers could actually see it.
What was your original title, by the way?
Well, so the original title was Abigail O'Leary, which is the original name of the character. Now her name is Abigail Moore. Tinseltown is a better title. I like it better. Peter gave me a bunch of other options, one of which was Lights, Camera, Action, which I accurately hated. But it all works out good.
Thank you for that truthfulness. How about you, sir? What have you done to increase your title?
Well, I'm trying to get one called Lights, Camera, Action.
Abigail O'Malley's your main character. I like this.
Again, going back to the fact that I'm not a salesman at all, I enjoy meeting people, I enjoy being in that scene, I enjoy supporting other artists, and I think for me, that giving back to the community gives back to you, that kind of thing. So when you support indie comics, it really is such a small circle. The more you go to these cons, you start seeing the same people. So as long as you're a good person, the new people support you. And then again, it goes back to putting out a good product as well. Something you can say about that.
That's impressive. You know, have you noticed with your titles? Have you changed the cover or anything? Have you noticed? There used to be a big thing in the '60s. DC was always trying to look like Marvel. They had the infamous checkerboard and all that because they thought, well, it must be the checkerboard that Marvel has. Well, have you guys done anything to actively change your book, or working your way down the panel? But have you done anything on an issue of Wicked Righteous to try and grab more readers with an altered cover?
If I have, it hasn't been on purpose.
No, you have no altered cover. For cons.
Oh, the variants?
Yeah.
Again, that was more just for my own selfish. But yeah, I have put out variants specifically for cons and for special signings and stuff like that. They're not things that would be available in stores, obviously, but it's something special that you be like, here's this, and then some special things.
Wow, very nice. Okay, that's cool. That's impressive. Have you done that with Scrimshaw?
No, we took a little bit different route with Scrimshaw, in the keeping with being fearless. You gotta really kind of hang it out there. The way I established myself with Scrimshaw was through kind of supporting Peter Simonetti's Kickstarter. And when I did so, I did a $100 level. I'm from Las Vegas, and so I thought, you know what, I had been developing Scrimshaw. We were going to self-publish it anyway, and not worry about getting picked up. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, I was interested in kind of what he was doing, making the jump from a graphic novel to a film, because I started in screenwriting and then moved over to comics. But when I did so, I thought, hey, let me take a chance here. So I hit him up on Twitter and said, you know what, I backed you $100, but I'll place a bet and I'll bet on the Dodgers, and if they win, I'll triple my dedication to your project. And that kind of started the dialogue online. And the Dodgers won, that was great. And I upped it to his art package, which was $300 or $400, I can't remember. And when I did it, I had the full intention of when he asked me who I wanted him to draw, it would be the characters from Scrimshaw, knowing that he would have to look up and see what Scrimshaw was to actually find when I did that, he had to look him up and he drew them all, and then lo and behold, he hit me up a little while later and says, do you have a publisher for this? And I was like, well, no, I don't. We were going to publish it ourselves. And so he's like, well, we hope you'll consider ALTERNA Comics. And I was like, that's pretty much our only consideration at this point. So, yeah, you got to really be able to take a chance and go out there and kind of hang out there. And you know, if it works, it works. But don't be scared to do it. You definitely got to get outside of the box if you can find a way. There's any way. You're going to spend money anyway, so spend it in the right place. And that's a unique way. And then we also, after that, you guys that I released it with, in keeping with the taking a chance, that you can really do a lot of damage out there with a small and very dedicated audience of people that connect with your product and things like that. When I first started promoting, we did self-publish issue 1 before we had to deal with ALTERNA and took it to a convention. And we also have, being from Las Vegas, we have a bunch of shot glasses made up. And so we were then out there pouring drinks with people who were at the convention with us and having a clandestine drinking affair.
Getting potential readers drunk, that's an interesting
affair. It definitely helps, but to speak to it a little bit higher than just, you know, going out there and getting wrecked. It gave them something to tie to that because we let them take the shot glass. And I still have people, even though we've only gotten in trouble once, and that was in Las Vegas, but in doing this, people will actually, and we told them, you come and see us at a convention, bring a shot glass before you drink. And people will actually still walk up to me at the convention. I'm here with ALTERNA, we can't be representing the company that way. When it was our thing, we were out there questioning it. So it's just, but those people are the people that will hold up your project over time, that will back your Kickstarters, that will buy your books, will follow you on in social media and boost your signal at every turn because you made a base connection with them in a unique fashion. And to do that, you have to get it outside the box. You're basically waving your arms in an ocean. Just go look on the floor. There's an ocean of content out there. How are you going to establish a connection with these people in a way that's outside the box of what everybody else is doing? And if you get thrown out of convention for doing it, guess what? That'll play well on social media too. You might not be wrong from that, and don't do it at Wondercon, but yes, I think.
It's probably also a good way of spotting which of your base are borderline alcoholics.
That is possible, yes, possibly, but, you know, it's all about taking a chance and getting it out there and see what works, but you gotta get outside of the box. So the best thing I think, there's a million creators out there with excellent stuff, and you can be the next one, but establishing your audience and connecting with them is the biggest thing you can do.
I have to know, how were some of these drawings of your characters? Were you satisfied with them? Or?
Yeah, they were awesome. We actually gave them away to people during our Kickstarter and stuff like that. They were great.
Wow, great.
Very cool.
Stephanie, what have you done to make sure people know about your book?
I think you have to, you got to utilize social media in every capacity. You have to talk to your fans and people that are wanting to know more about you and your product. You have to treat them like a human being, and you have to let your personality shine through, because if they feel like they're just a number or they're just a person that you're talking to, they're not going to really care about what you have to give them. You have to be excited about your product, or they're not going to be excited about your product. If you're just like, yeah, I wrote a book, I did a thing, why would they want to pick it up and read it? So having a presence on social media, being at cons if you're able to, is always important. The nice thing that Peter does is he does Alterna Comics Live, and he gives creators a chance to get on there. I think we all have been on there. Matt and I have been on a bunch of times, and at this point we're kind of known as like an entity, and we just bring our personalities and we make silly jokes, and it gives readers a chance to kind of interact with us a little bit, because they can ask questions and we answer them. But the main thing that Matt and I do is we try to set ourselves apart, because, like Eric said, I don't want to say competing because that sounds negative, but you've got indie comics is a small pool, but there's still a lot of us, and there are a lot of stories out there, and it's important to recognize how your story is different and be able to tell people that. If somebody comes up and they want to know, you should be able to pitch it to them and kind of, let them know what it's about, but in an engaging way. Be a presence online, interact with people through Twitter, through social media. If somebody comes up at a con and, try to have a conversation with them so that it's not just, so I know it's hard because we're all at a con right now and it's long days. It's hard to, be standing up on your feet all day, but if somebody sees you just sitting in your chair and you're just on your phone, they're not going to want to come up and talk to you.
So con lethargy will actually drive down sales.
Yeah.
And you also don't want to give any of your fans the con crud, I assume.
Yeah, which I am currently getting over. This is my third con in 3 weeks.
You're going to burn your book as soon as they're out of your eyesight.
Yeah, so con crud is a real thing. So yeah, definitely wash your hands a lot, because that's not fun.
Wow. How about you, sir? What have you done to push up sales?
Well, nothing yet, because we're doing our official press releases in the next month, so we're still kind of far ahead on stuff. But we do have some fun plans that we're working on. We were inspired a little bit by the fact that it's on newsprint, and we were kind of like harking back to when we were younger in the 80s and 90s reading comics, and we were thinking like, the story kind of plays off some sword and sorcery tales from the 80s. And we were like, okay, maybe we should do something different, like an 80s toy commercial. That is, we're making. I'm in contact with a custom toy maker, and we're making little figures to film a little commercial that's, like an old He-Man commercial or an old G.I. Joe commercial where you have the kids' hands playing and talking about it. And we're gonna try to do one for each issue, but that's the big goal. Right now, we're just gonna try to do one little one as the initial kind of launch the campaign with and stuff.
In a couple minutes, we'll open up the questions, but I wanted to know, has a letter from a reader ever changed the direction of the story?
I had one letter that sticks in my mind. The guy couldn't get past the introduction to the book, and he wrote this lengthy diatribe about how offended he was by the introduction. And it made for some, but no, it didn't change it. It made me, it surprised me because there have been female police officers in this country for over a century now, and I didn't think that it was that controversial, but apparently for some people it is.
How about you, sir? Has anyone ever wrote Wicked Wrenches, a letter that changed the arc of a story?
No, not an arc, I wouldn't say. There was early on, I guess when the very first issue came out, there was a review. It wasn't really a letter, but it was a review, and it was like a sliding scale review, which I've never seen. It was like, if this happens, then I'm going to give it like a 9.5. If the result of the story is this, it's a 3.7. And luckily, it was a 9.5. But one of the quotes he put on that, if it's this, it was, hopefully Mayo has heard of Michael last year. And so in a panel, further down the road, I put a little conclusion background, just as my little, yes I have.
Like a totem, yeah. How about you, sir? Has a reader ever altered Scrimshaw?
I didn't have a reader, but I once received a review on issue 2 that exposes an editorial mistake that I made, but she cast it in a good light, and I was like, oh, awesome. She put that there was a silent fight scene, and there was indeed a silent fight scene in issue 2. I was like, oh man, how did I put this silent fight scene there? Oh well, that's cool. And then that verged into an homage in volume 2 to that famous G.I. Joe episode called Silent Interlude. So I put a 12-page short comic into issue 2 that kind of, into volume 2 rather, that made a statement and paid homage to Silent Interlude with Nairi, who's the Maori woman in my screenplay playing the role of Snake Eyes. So I guess it created something new out of an editorial mistake that an editor or that a reviewer caught it that I had. So I thought it was pretty cool. It added 12 pages to a book and made a cool thing. So yeah, it improved it in that respect, I guess.
Stephanie, can you anticipate a reader changing a story once since you two are about to be published? Can you see a reader's reaction changing the arc of a story for either of you?
I mean, anything is possible. I don't know if I would ever kind of take that stance where it's like, I'm just going to rewrite the storyline now based off of what a reader's. The only thing, I do have a story though, the only thing that kind of comes close to it is with Heirs, which is a steampunk title. And there was a booth at Ocala Comic Con, and there was this 10-year-old girl who came around the corner and lost her mind. She loved steampunk, and she talked to Matt and ended up buying a few issues. And her mom ended up writing him, I think a few days later, just talking about how much she loved the story and how she just kind of doesn't fit in at school, and it kind of made her feel, that she had a place to belong. It was just this really cool kind of letter that we got. And for issue 7, we had 33 people drawn in. Our core artist drew 33 people, real people drawn into this festival scene. Our artist, Javi Lapara, who is going to be the artist on the comic formerly known as Text. We have to change the title on that one too. I think we're going to call it Lights, Camera, Action as well. But anyway, we had that girl drawn in, with her mom's permission, and
you actually put her in the book. That's
yeah, she's in the book. She's in the book, and she got the issue. And we actually have a video of her. We were walking into LA Comic Con. We have a video of her reaction of seeing herself in that issue. This girl who loved the story and said, it gave her this feeling of belonging. And she, we have this video of her seeing that reaction. I was like crying because it was so awesome. So we were able to do a video back to her saying like, hey, we saw that you loved the issue and stuff. So it wasn't necessarily a reader changing it, but it was a way that we involved the reader that I think was pretty special. So.
An interactive experience, actually.
Very, yeah.
How about you, sir, on the end? I know your book is about to be published, but can you see at this moment something changing by a reader standpoint?
No.
So say,
No, but I do have a quick story. I know we only have a few minutes left. I'll be quick about this. On a book I was the artist on years ago, we had experimented with the narrative. We had kind of played
what
with.
comic, by the way?
It's a digital comic called Death Betty. You can get it on Comixology for $1 each.
Yeah,
Hey, thank you.
Here's
And we experimented with it. We wanted to play with as little exposition and kind of see like what could we force the reader to pull out of it. And we did learn issue by issue, like sometimes we went too far. We didn't give enough info, you know, and it wasn't just one or two people. We got feedback from a lot of people. So that was kind of an interesting, we kind of expected that though going into this project. We were like, okay, we're gonna be getting feedback. So that was sort of built into the project, was to sort of respond to how readers responded to our experiments. And so going forward in the series next year when we do more, we're still going to be experimenting and trying stuff, but we're going to hopefully have learned from what we've done, and like maybe there's a better way to play around and to give less information, and but still have the reader engaged.
Now, one of the interesting things a lot of you guys have done is Kickstarter. It gives the whole comic kind of an impressive handmade quality.
Funny you should mention Kickstarter. We are live on Kickstarter for the graphic novel collection of Tinseltown. We just funded yesterday, and we have a special thing going on for Wondercon attendees. So you get the graphic novel collection, which is on higher quality paper, 5 additional pages of story, a couple new pinups. You can get soft enamel pins, all over print t-shirts, and then the special thing for everybody that's here at WonderCon, this is a rough sketch that Ryan Winn was kind enough to do for his pinup, and this is what it looks like for the final. It's amazing, right? It looks like it would make a great print. Well, we have 20 limited edition prints, and actually 3 of them are gone now, so we have 17. If you were to back the Kickstarter during WonderCon, we would give you that print for free, and if we have any left over, they're going to be a $20 add-on to the Kickstarter. So, Tinseltown, one word, on Kickstarter. I'm going to show you one last thing before we go to questions, and Ryan can talk a little bit about this. People ask us sometimes if there's going to be crossovers in the alternative comics world. Well, check this out.
All right, now this is drawn by Dean Kotz, who is my artist on Gods and Gears. We are missing a couple characters, one from the Wicked Righteous and one from Trespasser that will be added in the next week. And after that, I'm going to ink it up and color it, and we're going to have a, excuse my language, a badass Alterna poster. Yeah, check out @Dean Kotz on Twitter, folks. He's always posting amazing art every day.
Interesting. No, you were going to say, I'm sorry. I saw you leaning forward.
No.
So for anybody that has questions, we got a bag of free comments for everybody else.
Yeah, this is true. Although you should say, you got to step into the mic, so otherwise we can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't see, Harry? Yeah, you said your artist is in Argentina?
Yes.
How did that work, and how does it work? How did you meet him, and did you send the pages, did you speak Spanish, or?
Well, it's actually a surreal thing, and it goes back to interacting with people on social media. I was on vacation in Texas, and I was actually walking out the door to go to Schlitterbahn Water Park, and he messaged me, I had a little promo for Schlitterbahn.
Destination specific, I appreciate that.
And he messaged me on Twitter and said, hey, I'm a fan. I put out a digital comic way back that y'all should never look at. And he said, I'm a fan of that. If you ever are working on anything, I'd love to work with you. Looked at his stuff on my way there, now I'm back, and I guess there's a translator services that he uses, and that's how we communicate now. While I've been sitting here, he's messaged me a couple of times with art. And that's just how it works. We go back through that. Sometimes I've had to learn not to use slang because it doesn't translate well. But other than that, I mean, it's great.
Thank you for your question. Your comics are on the way. Come on up to the mic, sir. Everyone wants to hear you. There goes for anyone else who's letting up.
We have a microphone here. There you go.
2 tables and a microphone. Go ahead, sir. Walk the
I
house.
was just wondering about printing on newspaper, like you said. Are there disadvantages that you had to address, or that it's changed your style or changed the art or anything like that? Or advantages besides the value?
Yeah, you know, I know Peter, it's a process in terms of finding out where, you know, how much you have to adjust the inking and coloring to make it look as best as possible. One thing I should mention is that Alterna is starting something on the back end of our printing runs. So if you are an indie creator and you want to print yourself a newsprint, you can actually do it. It wouldn't necessarily be put out by Alterna, but it would be something that you could do at a really reasonable price that's a lot cheaper than print on demand.
Good question, Bill.
We found a screenshot with Dave's particular style when we first printed the graphic novel, because we kind of straddled the fence. This screenshot graphic novel was out before Peter introduced the newsprint program. And so there was a little bit of play on the first issue. We lost some of the finer line work on that Dave does because of the way he printed on newsprint was a bit darker. So you'll find that sometimes that can't happen. That would be the only one. But once you can account for that, you're good to go. It retains the quality of the line work is all there. It's really cool. Plus it smells like newsprint, which is pretty awesome.
And one thing I'll add, I've found that when I started talking with Alterna about this, and I had actually pitched my project, we had it colored, and then when I saw how good the coloring can be on the newsprint, where you can get cuts and grabs like you do, you can see all the detail, we realized we're gonna up our coloring now. Like we were coloring simpler, thinking it had to be simpler for newsprint. And then when we saw things like Feast or Famine and stuff like that, I was like, okay, no, you can really push it with newsprint.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that the color's gonna look really dull because it's newsprint, but and I think it depends on the comic too, and the, you know, how vibrant the colors are. But I found that it can still look really, really bold.
Mm-hmm. I've been really happy.
Yeah, sorry, I know that probably the problem is, but some I found with putting out the trade, because the trade is on a little bit more quality side, what's something you can find in today's comics. That readers have that option, and a lot of people that have bought the trade of Wicked Righteous also have the floppies, and it's been cool. And I've got a lot of customers saying that they go back and contrast and see. So it's I don't know. I think it's been a plus more than anything.
Thank you.
Ask your question, sir. Harmony here is locked and loaded.
Hi guys, awesome stuff. First time I've seen it. Everything looked great. Got some gears, looks amazing too.
Oh, thank you.
That artwork was awesome. But I've been in the self-publishing business right now for about 4 years. And it's hard, man. It's tough getting it out there and getting an audience, but you know, it's a bittersweet kind of thing. Well, my question was, how long was you guys into the self-publishing? Like when you started, when did you actually first get some sweetness, you know, getting published? When did you actually, how long did you also use it?
I think everybody probably up here started self-publishing, you know. I mean, it's not looked down upon like it is in maybe the prose industry. It's kind of seen as an initiative. So, you know, I found my first publisher just by taking books that I had self-published and selling them at cons and then wanting to do a collection. And then I'm sure the fact that I had a couple graphic novels published by one publisher, you know, made it easier for Peter to say yes to Tinseltown because it was something that I had already done. And, you know, one of the truisms in Hollywood worlds is that nobody knows you can do anything until you've actually done it. So, you just gotta do it.
One more question, I'm sorry.
No, please.
You said you
Don't
had
get
a
it
card. The card, you guys hands out the flyers.
What's that?
Oh,
The card.
info for the guy who hands out the flyers and.
The $100 card.
The promo for comic shops.
Oh, yes. You know what? I don't have his contact info with me right now, but if you come see us at SP01, we're going to be doing the signing, all of this at the booth immediately following this panel. I will look it up and I'll get it to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Hello.
We're getting the red light from the back.
The red light, wait, it's a red light, hold on a minute. You're doing great, keep going, you got it. By the way, I'd like to thank all of you for spending Batman's 80th birthday talking about indie comics.
Can we shoot last question? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
I just put in my first comic, and I was just wondering if you guys had any additional advice, or, I mean, I know I need to draw and write the next issue, obviously, but if you have any additional advice for getting your comic out there and strategies and stuff like that.
I think it depends on the route you want to take. Are you looking for a publisher, or what did you have in mind?
I'm so new, and I don't even know the strategy. I thought I got to finish this comic, and now I'm sort of like, it's done.
So you did the thing, you made it. Yeah, the best thing I can tell you is #1 mailing list, start there. That is, if you're gonna go to a con, but that's probably your next most important step is show up to a convention, books in hand, and start working. That's all you can do. And start getting your name, start connecting with your audience right now. Like you already did the thing. You know, the next one will come, the next one will come, the next one will come. You just keep working, put your head down, start showing up. Like Terry said, start meeting people, shaking hands, and broadening your audience and scope. One of the things that's lovely about that is with my particular situation, Dave's work has increased as Scrimshaw's become more visible. And so he's like, you know, I want him to be a success as well as a character, and I'm really genuine with work. And we needed a colorist, so we put out a call for colorist, and Ryan's like, I'd love to do that. And if I had known Ryan before that, probably wouldn't have done that. And so, as David said, once you're doing it, people will rush to help you. And you'll it's weird, like, you can't get anyone to look at your book. Hey, look at my book, hey, look at my book. You'll put it out there all day. But it seems like the minute you're in the deep end of the pool, people are rushing to help you out. So that's the best advice I can give you, just keep them in the deep end and go.
And certain cons are definitely more supportive of indie creators, and WonderCon was the first con I ever did. I'm so glad it was, because, you know, WonderCon, you know, people come and go through doing stuff, and, you know, people were great.
Wow. And now it's Tinseltown, Wicked Righteous, Scrimshaw. Name your books, guys. It came out on Wednesday, but that doesn't count.
Well, yeah, there's Hex, there's Air Distiller, and again, our Kickstarter for our spin-off series, Tales from Nocturnia, is launching on Tuesday. So
there we go. Good luck to you.
And Gods and Gears in September. It's the biggest story ever told in 4 issues.
Table.
SPO1.
SPO1.